Who wants a pot of coffee? I just made coffee. You want a cup of coffee? Sure, there you go. Who wants coffee? Anybody else want coffee? Who wants coffee?
And now it's time for the man with the caffeine, the new tropics for the brain. It's Coffee with Mike. Hang in, hang tight, grab your cup, and let's get this thing started.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Java Chats. Coffee with Mike here, and today I get to sit with this gentleman who happens to be maybe about a third away around the world from where I'm at. He's all the way down in New Zealand. I have here with me Asa Cox. Asa, thanks for joining us today on Java Chat.
Great to be here. Thank you very much for the time.
As I try to choke down some coffee real quick. Obviously the time difference is interesting. Usually I'm doing this at 8:30 in the morning. Today it's his 8:30 or 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning. I think it is actually where you're at tomorrow. So I'm in Wednesday, he's in Thursday.
Thursday is a great day already. You should look forward to it.
I like hearing that. That gives me, right on, good. Okay, that means I can go to bed tonight. The sun does shine tomorrow. He's proof. Yeah. Awesome. As we do in all our shows, we'd love to have you introduce a little bit of yourself. I'm sure you got an interesting story. We were just kind of talking a little bit in pre-show about what his company does, and he's involved in something that I have dug into. I'm not a super student of, but I understand how it works. So I'm kind of curious, like, how'd you get to be the CEO of this kind of a company? I mean, like, where are you from? What'd you do?
Yeah, so I'm a non-technical founder, so I'm neither data scientist. I haven't coded anything since a Commodore +4 in 1987.
I remember those. I actually remember
those. Tapes to play the games, and you had to look at a command interface, and that's literally the only coding in I've ever done. So yeah, my story, the reason I get to where I am is really through business development, relationship building, following your dreams, following your passions type thing. So I did business, kind of general business management at school, because prior to that I was always trying to hustle some money to pay for whatever it be, pay TV for sport or posters for my wall or whatever it may be. And so I was kind of entrepreneurial as a kid. Used to put Christmas cards in the newspapers I delivered, try and get better tips, cut old ladies' lawns, did some dusting and cleaning around people's just whatever it could be to get some of those gold coins in my pocket.
Sure.
And so when I went to university, I did kind of business management, did a little bit of management consulting and entrepreneurship kind of stuff. Started my own company at university, kind of a marketing and promotions type gig. Tried to get that off the ground post university, but we didn't really know what we were doing. We raised some money from some real estate agents, I think. It was something weird. I don't know. A few buddies try to find our way in the world. But my father was working in big pharma, worked for GlaxoSmithKline, had done for all of his career type thing, and so he just started his own business, like a trading company in pharmaceuticals, and so that I kind of had to join the family company to pay my way through university, and then I guess in some respects, unfortunately for me, I was in the industry for the next 15 years on and off.
Wow.
In the kind of business development function, it was great actually. I started as a 17-year-old and I was in boardrooms kind of doing pitches. So for me, it was in at the deep end, and I realized I kind of thrived in that kind of environment where think fast, kind of hustle, fake it till you make it type stuff. And in the world of business development, there's a lot of opportunities, right? You're pattern matching all the time. What do they want? What have we got? Is there a deal here? So I just kind of loved the cut and thrust of all of that. It wasn't in a domain which I studied or kind of loved, but kind of gave me a good connection with my dad to kind of be involved in that business. And so that kind of, I did a few other bits and pieces when I tried to leave the family company to do my own thing, and then again dragged back and kind of through my 20s kind of tried to escape, but never quite made it. The pull back to the family business was too strong.
Yeah, that's, and again, it depends on the family ties and how that is. You can easily get pulled back in. I've got a couple of friends that have been doing family businesses. In fact, I just spoke to another gentleman this morning, who, of all things, was in the restaurant business with his family. Went and bought a shop with his father, separated from his father, and then just I think he said in March of 2019, right before everything got shut down, he opened up his own place.
Wow.
And his is a story where we're going to be doing a press release for him, because his is a story where he actually has become the bridge between a professional sports team and the community that loves them. It's a really cool story. So we're going to have fun with that. But that's, again, family business, and he hasn't left the industry. Now, you left the industry. You actually stepped out and went into something else completely different. You mentioned university. You did that in New Zealand, or?
No, in the UK. So I'm British, English. Yeah. So
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I went to university in Aston. For those who follow Premier League football, it's near Aston Villa, the Premier League team. I don't support them, but in the middle of the country. It was great. Big university town. Yeah, great connections made. Kind of still have lots of friends there, but yeah, kind of had a few entrepreneurial things with some friends. I kind of always had that. I love the idea kind of phase. I kind of like want to get something started, and my entrepreneurial challenge is seeing it to success before the next one kind of gets my interest. And so that's been an ongoing challenge for me on my journey, for sure.
Typical entrepreneurship. It's like, okay, that's good. That started. That's good. Is it walking? Okay, it's walking. Okay, good. Next. Yeah, that's exactly how we are. You're now in New Zealand, though. How the hell did you get down there?
Yeah, so but the usual clandestine New Zealand immigration policy of sending out beautiful women around the world to various English-speaking countries and kind of bringing us all back here. So that's what happened to me.
You got Shanghai, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Could be worse, right? Could be a lot worse.
She looked at you, said, "Kia ora, mate," and it was it. It was done. It was over. He was gone. Exactly tickets in hand.
Yeah, gone. So actually, we had a little bit of a hiatus in Canada. So before moving from the UK to literally the other side of the world, we had nearly 4 years in Southern Ontario in Canada. Kind of no kids, and had a wild time kind of doing snow sports and winter sports.
Oh,
and I
sure.
had a fantastic time. It was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And so when I was in Canada, I spun out a data kind of subsidiary out of the family company, and because that was kind of what I thought was going to be a bit of a pathway towards tech, because I kind of always enjoyed tech. I say I'm not a coder. A lot of my friends were, and I looked on to them enviously as they got their early stock options and whatever else. But
Sure.
I kind of created this data company, which was a searchable database in essence that you could kind of subscribe to.
Mhm.
And so when I moved to Canada, I raised a little bit of money from a pharmaceutical lawyer who basically just wanted deal flow for his law firm. Kind of in hindsight's a wonderful thing. It was a very bad experience from an investor perspective. It was great that we got some funding and we kind of went on this great journey for a couple of years, but it definitely taught me to find good investors. So there's good money and there's bad money. Not in terms of the source of the money, but in terms of what direction that kind of takes the business in. And so they were much more interested in growing the referrals to their law firm than they really were building a sustainable business. The lawyer actually, they put the money in as a tax kind of write-off as well, so there was no real growth mentality. It was I've got this tax bill that I kind of either I give the money to the IRS or I put it into you guys. And so it was kind of, again, it's a good lesson. It's the first time I'd raised external capital. First time I really looked at investors, because my dad was really like, we're never taking money for anybody else. Anyway, so I kind of got lessons on that.
Yeah, sure.
And then the plan always with my wife was, as soon as we had children, that we'd move down here. So we had our first kid in Canada, and then within 6 months we were living in New Zealand.
How do you like it down there?
Oh, it's paradise. Yeah, it
That's
really is.
and
It's everything you think it is what it is. Yeah.
I've seen some amazing videos and photos, and both from land and from sea, and just the scenery out there is just unbelievable.
Yeah, it is a picture. I mean, there's most of the US is similar. It's got beautiful parts, but in New Zealand, it's all scrunched down into this tiny little place with hardly any people that you can get around super easy. That was one of the frustrations in Canada. Was it's so massive that you don't really get to see it, right?
Not in one summer. That's for damn sure. It's just the states are way large. Well, the United States isn't exactly a small piece of land either.
No, that's massive, absolutely huge.
Yeah, so I always thought, and it's a bucket list of mine to get down there. So if I do, we'll have to go out.
Absolutely.
It's from everything that I've seen, plus the fact that I have a Polynesian background, it's always been a dream of mine to go down and go hang out, go hang out with everybody and just get to acclimated, I guess. Might not be the right word, but get around the culture.
Yeah.
And really share stories and hear stories and that kind of thing. So as you were down there, once you got down there, what happened from there? I mean, you're still kind of in between things at this point, or?
Yeah. So the business had turned into more of a consulting kind of practice because we had all this data and it was easier to monetize services than it was to continue to build out the product, which again, what the law firm kind of wanted. But I kind of determined that moving to New Zealand was the opportunity to basically just go, what do I want to do? Because again, I had young kids, consultants have to travel. From New Zealand, I would have to travel at least 12 hours to get to any clients pretty much. It was like, okay, now's the time to really start afresh and kind of follow passion and kind of just, build kind of career 2.0 kind of thing. And so that's what I did. I basically came in, parked my old LinkedIn profile, started a new one, and went, right, I'm in a new country. I know nobody apart from my wife's family. I like to drink coffee and wine. So basically in New Zealand, that means you can pretty much get a meeting with anybody. And that is the special thing about New Zealand is you can pretty much knock on the virtual door of a CEO and get a coffee. I mean, it's from a North American experience where you got 6 assistants to get through. You've got to kind of get through the receptionist. It's just kind of like don't bother me unless you're, my peer or more superior, whatever, right? Whereas in New Zealand, they're very willing to have that conversation. And then it's down to you to kind of add value, but they're very willing just to kind of have a chat. And so I wasn't really exactly sure what I was going to do when I came down. So I tried a whole bunch of different things. The New Zealand beer is was growing. Craft beer was just getting going. I had quite a lot of contacts in China through my pharmaceutical days, and so I created a craft beer exporting kind of venture. And went, if I can combine drinking beer with business, then maybe this is something I could.
It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all.
So that was good fun. I kind of started on that, but it was just the challenge of New Zealand is it's not ready to scale. So all the brewers, and this is great, but what happens if we're successful because we haven't got the capacity to supply China? So it's kind of like a really weird situation. They're like, we'd love to do this, but we're in fear of it being successful. And so they all decided instead to go to the Northern Hemisphere, to the UK, where everyone in New Zealand has roots pretty much back to England. So yeah, unfortunately, they decided to spend more time in the UK than in China, but whatever. But it was good again to kind of understand a bit more around the New Zealand psyche, which is a little bit fearful of big success, interestingly enough.
Sure.
But what I found was that didn't really get me the kind of networks I thought I might need to do something more around data and tech. And so I created a little growth hacking kind of agency. So off the back of kind of doing stuff in North America, I'd been exposed to basically the hustle of kind of marketing and again business development. I kind of set it up as a more of a digital marketing growth hacking kind of thing, and that just enabled me to start charging for the drinking coffee pretty much. And so the kind of things that I've been doing in North America that I've been exposed to, I just kind of brought some of those growth hacking principles to New Zealand and just hired a couple of kind of grads and did some digital marketing, and kind of just use that again as a way to kind of get different relationships.
Sure.
To the point where I guess it'll be 6.5 years ago now. So I've been in New Zealand coming up 8 years, and so 6.5, well, maybe 6 years ago. Basically, I went to a startup weekend, and it was in healthcare. So I'm like, okay, well, I've got some healthcare kind of background. I'm kind of interested in tech. I put together a couple of ideas that I thought were interesting, kind of pitched them at the startup weekend, and a couple of PhDs from the university there said, oh, this machine learning stuff that you're kind of talking about, we think we might be able to do it. And so that was basically the first couple of devs and data scientists who went, okay, this idea maybe not, but actually, if I come up with some other opportunities, will you guys be interested in kind of collaborating on it? And so that was the start of what is now Arcanum. And I just then basically just went out and again, knocked on doors, talked to people, and gradually got our first few projects.
So was Arcanum just like a straight out, here's the solution to the next deal, or was it something that evolved, or?
Yeah, so what I thought initially was after this kind of healthcare thing, which was kind of interesting, but was a bit too early in terms of the market, was then how do I apply machine learning to business development? So I kind of saw Salesforce was kind of getting bigger, but that for me felt like a widget-based CRM. So you're trying to sell the same thing or kind of a portfolio of things, but it wasn't relationship focused. So I was trying to, how can I apply my background, what I've seen in kind of global business development and relationship building, and is there a way to apply machine learning to that? So I kind of started going down that path. Had some bad experiences with some developers overseas, what kind of basically just meant it never got off the ground. But it did help me kind of get a lot deeper into machine learning and AI and what was really possible and what was speculative and kind of just what was real. And so through that project and talking to people about that project again, kind of got into okay, well, we're thinking about this, and they're like, well, that's great, but what can it do this? Kind of got into what is possible with AI, because if you think about 6 years ago, it's basically like Elon Musk saying the robots are coming, we're all doomed. So he kind of started setting up the kind of counter AI type stuff. Or for our generation, it was the Terminator, right? So you basically had either it's literally robots taking over the world, or AI coming to take all of the jobs, or at the other end of the extreme, it was the beginning to a rise of chatbots on people's websites, right? So people had no real idea about what AI could do. And so that was basically what I was doing, was knocking on doors of going, hey, look, I can tell you what's possible in your industry with AI as a way to kind of start getting on the journey to utilizing it in your business. And I was just doing the Googling that they couldn't be bothered to do and presenting it back as an expert, which again, I've been an expert for all of 5 minutes, but I was just positioning it in a way which was business centric, because I wasn't a technical founder, I wasn't a technical person. So I wasn't coming at it from the perspective of the algorithms or the data science. It was from the business perspective. So
I honestly,
what value can you get from it? Which was different.
I think that's actually a greater value, because it keeps you from going into the weeds too quickly. Which is, as somebody who's also studied machine learning and identity resolution, stuff like that, it's very easy to go running into the forest and leaving your client, your prospective client behind. But if you're looking at it from a business standpoint of what it can actually do to affect the business, affect the user experience, affect the actual bottom line, depending on who you're talking to in the organization, obviously. My biggest luck was always with the CFO, and I was amazed the CFO could see marketing concepts better than most marketers.
Wow.
For some reason in their head, the numbers translate so well that it's a great idea. The moment you bring it to a marketer, it's like, oh, that won't work.
Right.
The numbers show it'll work.
Yeah. And that was part of the mistake that we kind of made, was despite the fact we were trying to talk to the business, it ended up being still a technology engagement, technology project.
At the end of the day.
Understandably.
At the end of the day, for sure. But to get the approval, you know, in business development, we always hit people at different levels in management, just so that whoever is the actual responsible decision-making party is the one who actually gets the final message. And if we happen to hit 2 people above them, they'll basically say, go back to so-and-so. And now that person knows, oh, now the C levels are watching. I better handle this.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately, it's a North American thing. We have to do it that way. It's because nobody wants to bother with anything. But once you get to that last part, there's going to be some tech talk. And that's just how it goes.
Yeah. And at the time, until, to be honest, I'd say until COVID, a lot of the discussions we were having was kind of like an innovation project where they were like, okay, someone in the C-suite has seen a video, or their young nephew have said, oh, you need to be doing this AI stuff. So somebody's on high says, we need to do AI. And then eventually it would come down to us. And they're like, hey, the boss somewhere has said, we've got to do AI. So can you help us figure out where we should do it and what that kind of means? And can you do a prototype? And so that's where we kind of started, was people saying, we need to figure out what's possible for our business, and can we pay you to kind of figure some stuff out, give us some demos, kind of show the higher ups that we're doing AI, or at least researching it. And so that's how we started. It kind of was a services business. But the critical thing was always, because it was a naive market, we kept all of the IP, because
that's
the
awesome.
people that we were selling to wouldn't know the code if it slapped them in the face, right? They have no idea. So we're like, don't you have that technical debt? We'll keep all of the code. We'll just give you some outcomes. And so that was always the strategy.
That amazes me too, that AI has become such a complicated coding thing versus the guys that do the normal coding.
Right.
And I didn't realize how much of a stark difference there is between the 2 languages. There are stark differences. I guess because of the methodology that it passes through as far as AI is concerned.
Yeah, it's come out of academia, right? And it just takes
Definitely.
a while for the academic kind of origins to kind of translate into a more common set of coding principles and languages and that kind of stuff. So it just takes
it's gonna take the super brainiacs to come up with that one. Meanwhile, the rest of us are out here going, okay, guys, anytime.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How do you make it easy for us?
Yeah, really, please, somebody make it a little simpler, would you? We're gonna take a quick 30-second break. When we come back, we'll chat a little bit more with Asa about what some of the challenges that he faced and some of the things that kept him going. So we'll be back in 30. Hey guys, back. Coffee with Mike here, sitting with Asa Cox of Arcanum. We were talking a little bit about his journey earlier, from the time that he went through Canada and lived the life, if you will, enjoying all of that up there, and then moving down to the land of the long white cloud. That's what New Zealand is called in Maori. Having to restart over again, that had to be a little bit daunting. I mean, like, you had all this stuff, great stuff back up in the UK and possibly Canada. Now you're in this whole new place, which essentially is a rock in the middle of the water. Yep. Albeit a big one, don't get me wrong. Yep. But you're like starting from scratch. I mean, what's all that like?
In some respects, it was incredibly exciting. It was every person I'd met, I had no connection to whatsoever. It was kind of fresh faces, fresh stories, fresh connections, which, that endorphin, I guess, of, connecting with somebody and then going, I really enjoyed that. And kind of like, it was kind of like, life in kind of speed dating kind of world. It was kind of like, can I make connections anywhere? Because that was really what it's about. So it was exciting. But on the other hand, it was, I've got a wife and a couple of young kids at that point, and going, okay, well, how do we survive, right? Because as much as there was still a kind of pseudo business still kind of running in the pharmaceutical space, it was like, well, I'm 12 hours in time zone away from that, and I don't want to be operating it. So kind of really in this space of transitioning. So there was a little bit of uncertainty, but as I'm sure many of your listeners, that's also, that risk and that uncertainty is also part of the entrepreneurial excitement. Is, can I figure it out? Can I get through this? And so for me, it was an exciting kind of time, but it really was just a matter of arbitraging every conversation into, can I add a little bit of value to the next person that I talk to, because they may be, you know, the one that can open an opportunity or connect me to somebody else, whatever. So every meeting was precious, because you just didn't know where it was going to go, which was pretty exciting. But it really was just starting from scratch. I mean, I just knew my wife's family, and they're very local. So they weren't spread across the country. They were school teachers. They were builders. There was one in IT, but in a completely different area that I had no idea about. So there was really nobody useful that would really set me on a path to what I wanted to do. So I basically, you know, joined some sports teams, joined a couple of local networking groups, networked through our church, and basically just went, okay, where can I embed myself into different communities and try and, one, establish my life here, because that's what we were never planning on leaving again. So I had to figure out how to get into communities, both locally, professionally, you know, from a personal kind of perspective, and also then figure out how to build a business of some kind, because my CV didn't look like CVs that they had here in New Zealand. So, you know, I'd kind of been in family business and international and blah, 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 but you know, I couldn't fit, or maybe I didn't want to fit into a box to go, actually, I'm just going to get a regular job here and just kind of, you know, take the paycheck and keep the wife happy and look after the kids. But I kind of, by that point, already mentally said, I can't work for other people, because I've been doing my own thing for so long. I think apart from working for my family, I'd spent a grand total of maybe 9 months on the payroll of another company. So for me, it was just, I didn't know how to do the work for somebody else thing. And so that just wasn't really an option for me mentally. And that definitely put on some pressure from in the family sense, because my wife's like, hey, let's just go and get a regular job. And I'm like, well, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know whether that would make me happy, and so on. So there was definitely some tension there, but like I said, it was also a very exciting time.
Most entrepreneurs, in fact, as I mentioned, we had another recording earlier today. Same story. It's as they tried to climb as they did climb the corporate ladder, if you will, they found themselves quite miserable. They just didn't find any fulfillment in doing it. In their case, it wasn't so much that it was working for somebody else. It was just the box, like you mentioned. The box was too restrictive. They didn't really have enough to make them feel like they were fulfilled. And I think everybody's looking for that, whether you're in a job or whether you own a business. I don't think that's exclusive to entrepreneurs. But being able to find that, that's the big question: is, where will I find fulfillment? Will it be as the gas station attendant, or will it be the CEO of a company, or will it just be an investor? Whatever that may be, I think it's just a question everybody has to answer for themselves. When you finally figure that part out, well, let me back up a sec. Some of the entrepreneurs that we've had on here have had mentors, have had coaches and things of that nature. Who were some of your biggest influences as you were moving through this journey?
Yeah, I think in hindsight, that was one of my biggest missteps, is not very early on trying to find a mentor here in New Zealand to help me navigate through the landscape that I kind of didn't know at all. Throughout my earlier career, there was a few people that I would kind of consider mentors, in terms of they were further ahead in their careers, or they'd had more experience or whatever, and they would be people that I regularly have conversations with. But I don't know whether they would classify themselves as a mentor, whether I would classify myself as a mentee. It was more of a that was just the kind of relationship that we had. And to be honest, I think because of most of my "this is what the world looks like" came through my father and my own kind of work experiences, and he didn't push the value of mentoring, whether that just didn't happen in his corporate life, or whether he didn't get the value from it potentially. That just wasn't something that was was kind of off the forefront of my mind when I came to New Zealand, because it hadn't been historically. So it kind of, and that's definitely a burden which in the early days, and and throughout up until probably the last 2 or 3 years, that as a solo founder, kind of entrepreneur, then the weight is on your shoulders. So I'd never have really had, since I kind of created the data business in the pharma space in 2008, I hadn't had any other co-founders. So for me, it's always been a solo journey, and you feel that, the weight on the shoulders, the burden quite a lot. And mentors can definitely help that, but that just wasn't a path that people had pushed or promoted or recommended. And so for me, it was definitely, it weighed heavy on my shoulders. But more recently, that's changed, and I now kind of see an incredible value from that. But that's definitely one of the things I'd recommend and wish that I'd had a lot earlier, was somebody to share the mental stress, the challenges, the decisions, and just kind of a sounding board for sensible decisions. I just didn't have that.
You kind of had to go and take the machete and cut through the trail yourself. We've all done it at least once, maybe twice. You mentioned you have co-founders. What's that like? As I was looking at your site, it looks like you've got a team of almost 20.
Yeah, in total we have. So that kind of coming back to where Arcanum started 6 years ago, there's definitely some painful co-founder stories. So one of the I mentioned the startup weekends, the healthcare one, where I kind of met a couple of guys, and one of them was a double PhD data scientist, American, actually, kind of child prodigy musician, to be on stage with Stevie Wonder, and was just like this mega brain. And everybody could, when you talk about AI and data science, that was the kind of persona people expected to be involved, right? And so I'm like, okay, this guy's got the academic chops, he can kind of talk the talk, I can kind of do the business ideas, and he's got he can talk about how it could happen. So okay, let's start this AI business together, because that's a good match. I'll do the selling, you do the doing, and kind of off we go. But I think it was a decision out of opportunity, or not, desperation is not the right word, but it's kind of like, I thought I'd found this unicorn that every company in New Zealand would want to work with. And that was going to be, the brain that I was going to sell, in essence, to just kind of start the company. And he was fine with that. He was kind of massaged his ego. But very, very quickly, it became pretty clear that he was way too academic, didn't actually want to get his hands dirty in coding stuff, wanted to be more kind of theoretical, wanted a whole bunch of minions to kind of do the coding, and kind of, so it's ended up being incredibly painful. And
I can see that.
We got a few projects, and it was kind of fine commercially. Kind of the wheels were beginning to turn. We'd hired a couple of developers, and then a friend of mine from the UK reached out, and we were good friends. And she said, I'm thinking about leaving the UK for whatever family reasons. I want to come to New Zealand, and I want to kind of start afresh. I've got some money, how about I put it into the business, and we kind of come in, and we kind of, so she'd been a COO of some startups before. I'm like, great, now I've got the technical, I've got the operations, I've got me, this is going to be great. Same challenge, not cut out for the stresses of life, plus the stresses of business, plus the stress of the data scientist guy who was kind of all over the place. And so it got pretty messy. And then, because of the way we weren't growing as quickly as we thought, we started looking for outside funding to kind of go, let's give ourselves some breathing room so we can build some stuff. And then, unfortunately, we got not involved, but a kind of a very bizarre situation where somebody came in and turned the other two co-founders against me, joined the board, and tried to force me. It got super, super messy. It worked out really well in the end, but for 6 months it was horrible, just really, really horrible.
It's kind of hard to, especially when you're hearing from, like in the case of the child prodigy, it's kind of hard to tell what the reality is until you actually get involved. I mean, sure, you can sit down and interview people and ask questions, but anybody can answer a question. It's whether or not they can perform that becomes the real question. and how well they can perform, especially under pressure like this, the COO.
That's right.
It doesn't wax well when somebody isn't able to handle the pressures from both sides. You know, it's like that. It's not necessarily burning the candle from both ends, but you're definitely putting a 90-pound press on it. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and very academic oriented people who are used to getting 6 months, 12 months, 3 years to do some research or to produce an output. They can kind of wade around in the data, and it's like, no, we need to deliver something to this client like next Friday. So that the cadence, it's just that there was a complete mismatch in the business needs of the brains versus the kind of academic orientation of the brains, and it just was a complete mismatch. But the big lesson for me was, I mean, it was a stupid, dumb thing not to have done. It's just nail down shareholders agreements and all that kind of stuff, right? It was just a naive, I'd been through it before. I had shareholders agreements. I'd gone into business with a lawyer who was, the shareholders agreement were a mile long. So I knew better, but I still kept putting it off. We created the entity, we kind of divvied up the shares in the company, and we never got around to getting the shareholders agreement sorted out. And that bit me in the bum big time. But
yeah, that'll definitely bite you. Good point to make, because I've done the same thing. You get in a business with people, you hope that everybody's got the right idea of what they need to get done, and then all of a sudden stuff doesn't get done, and you're like, okay, what's going on? Why is this not completed yet? Oh yeah. That's not going to work.
No, and unless you've got the legal levers to be actually kind of reclaim part of your business or kind of hold people's foot to the flames, then really it becomes a personal thing, which is then at
that point you might as well just shut it down, because once it becomes personal, it's no longer good. It's not business anymore. So, but since then you graduated and you found this new team. So how did you find who you have now?
Yeah, so through going through a formal funding process, once the mess had been tidied up and I had 100% ownership of the company back again, then I kind of went out and found some proper investors in the tech space. One of them, Scott Houston, who's our CTO, he'd a multi-venture kind of founder. Everybody kind of knew he was like the network. Yeah, if I'd known him 12 months before, a world of difference. He just knew everybody. Everybody knew.
Where were you? Why are you showing up now?
And I got to meet Scott because he was on a flight back from Vancouver to Auckland and sat next to a friend of mine from Canada. Scott was thinking about writing a book now that he'd retired because he sold his company. And he's like, I want to do something around AI. Do you know people in AI? And my buddy's like, actually, there's this guy down in Wellington that you may want to go and talk to. And then one thing led to another. He invested and became the CTO. So again, very serendipitous, but again, just networks and conversations, right? And that's sometimes you can think you're doing the smart thing, and then other times it just gets delivered to you on a plate. And yeah, it's a good way to start. So then off the back of that, we then kind of built a team proper, rather than being a opportunistic, who can I meet to kind of create something. Then it became a much more structured approach. And now we've got proper people doing proper jobs. And I know that I'm working from home today, and I know everything is just fine. Whereas, back then it would be, if I'm not in the office, I'm worried about what the heck's going on. So it's a lot easier life when you've got a good team around you.
And everybody's located there.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've got a couple of contractors, one in Thailand who does kind of web stuff. Somebody actually in California does some very technical stuff. But yeah, everyone else is based in New Zealand, and all but one of the New Zealand team are based in Wellington.
Awesome. That's really good. Yeah, that sounds like it was a proper procedure.
Yeah.
We have pretty much the same idea. What would you say was, what's your biggest takeaway from everything you've done so far?
I think if you believe it enough, you're passionate enough about it, and you've got that endurance, the grit that everyone kind of knows is necessary as part of entrepreneurialism, then you can get there, right? I mean, literally, I turned up in a country with no background in something that I wanted to do. Didn't know anybody. And yeah, again, it's been a journey, but it kind of just shows that with enough determination, with enough just grind, get up and do it again, you can actually build something which has some good potential. So for me, it's that endurance. Yeah, it's, you know, there's been times where it's not been good for my health, it's not been good for my family health, it's not been, but and I wouldn't want to, you know, I wouldn't want to go through that again. But if it was the only way to get to where I am now, then yeah, I probably would do it again.
Yeah, endurance. There's a lot to be said for being able to endure, especially through the rough times.
Yeah.
We've all done it. There are numerous entrepreneurs that have said, "You want to take this journey, be ready to have a year or two of no paychecks."
Yeah,
that's just how it goes. You're going to be dropping money right back into the company. You're going to be struggling to pay bills. You're going to be. I remember when I was first, before I started doing this podcast, I actually did a live on Facebook. At the time I was doing business development and stuff, and it was at night, so of course background's dark, and I remember I was in my red hoodie, and I literally said, "So you want to be an entrepreneur? Awesome, let me share with you what it's like." And I poured out all the bad stuff, and I just kept dumping. I'm like, that's about 15 to 20 minutes of all the shit that you're going to be dealing with. By the way, that's just the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So if you're looking at it though from the standpoint of, I don't have a lot to look forward to, that's wrong.
Yeah,
in the midst of all of that stuff that you're going to have to deal with, the good is on the other side. Like you said, as long as you have the endurance, if you can run the full race, and the race never ends, but if you can run the full race, on the other side, there is a finish line. There is.
You have the conviction, right? And that kind of came back to your point of before about where's your passion? Because you have to be able to get up every day and train yourself to jump out of bed and put your best effort into that day, because that's what you got to do. You just got to be able to keep on doing that on the roller coaster of, you know, use the ups to kind of give you some energy and just try and bottom out the downs because they're inevitable. And if you don't have that passion and that conviction, it's kind of a half-hearted, I'm going to try and make this work, but I've got to back, you know, you kind of get why investors say you've got to be all in on this, because if you're not all in, then
Will not happen.
it's going to come up when it gets hard. And, and it will get hard. You know, we see the Hollywood stories, or we see the podcasts and the magazines about all these overnight successes, which have taken 10 years. And all of the painless process. That's not real, right? That's the 1%.
Yeah, that's the rarities. That's the unicorns.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, guys, we're going to take one more 30-second break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about Arcanum, what it does, what it can do, and how you can get a hold of either Asa or any of his team to be able to discuss any of your projects that you might be coming online. So we'll be back in 30. Hey, guys, back for our last section here at Java Chat, sitting here with Asa Cox. The company's called Arcanum.
Yep.
It is, well, I'm just going to let you talk about it. I have an idea. We talked about it earlier, but I'd rather the man talk about it himself. So what is Arcanum? What does it do?
Yeah. So Arcanum is the Latin word means secret elixir. So for anybody that plays Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, then it kind of, aside from coffee, secret elixir is, the Arcania, the Arcanum is that kind of, the secret elixir. And so what we want to do, and the whole mission behind the company, is to help people get access to that AI, that secret elixir that can make their companies, their products more awesome. That's the kind of mission of the company. Is there's a lot of latent awesomeness in companies.
Nice.
Everyone, like entrepreneurs, there's product owners, and there's entrepreneurs that go, oh, wouldn't it be awesome if our software could do this, or if we didn't have to repeat this process, or we got an understanding of what we should do next. That would make my workplace better, make my customers happier, whatever it may be. And so that's what we're on a mission to do, is to help companies unleash their latent awesome through machine learning and AI. So what we've got now, we're about to go into public access for our platform, and that platform helps that unleashing process. So on our journey of building various products and prototypes and MVPs, what we found was when we handed them over, handed the code, it never made it all the way through to production. So we were giving them the machine learning bit. And it's sometimes big enterprises, sometimes smaller, but it never quite made it into the IT world. It was an IT project, but never ended up connecting to the current IT. And so what we found through that discovery process, and even internally, was the world of the data scientist eggheads and the world of the developer geeks is so different that globally, and this is a pretty easy to find number, over 80% of AI/ML projects fail at the point of IT integration.
Why do you think that is?
Because these two worlds is just so different. So there's data scientists who are kind of in the data, they've got their own tooling. So they're kind of doing their data exploration, their data science, their algorithm developments and so on. But the code that they produce is kind of lab scale research code. But that's the thing that gets handed over to the developers to say, right, now go and productionize that. And the developers are like, we don't even know what this is. This is in R, or it's not, at that point, it wasn't even in Python. So here's a Jupyter notebook. Here's some algorithms written in some weird language we don't know. And how do we actually get it from this run on a local machine to being web scalable in the cloud? And that disconnect is just such a massive misunderstood or just not understood problem that it was just causing so many projects to fail. And so we saw in a micro way, we saw in our own team where we've got data scientists and we've got software devs, and even in the same office, literally opposite each other, that synchronization wasn't easy, that integration, especially to do it at scale, repeatable, not bespoke kind of software every time. And so kind of solving our own problem and then solving a larger problem in the industry.
So that opens up so you're opening this up as a to the general public. When you say that, you're now going to give the ability for, is this more meant for ITs and devs to jump into, or is this like literally a business owner can actually jump into this and make use of it?
Yeah, so ultimately we want to democratize the access to machine learning and AI, which in some respects the big cloud companies are saying they're doing that, kind of like come along and plug and play, but it really isn't plug and play.
I haven't seen that yet.
You've got to be an expert, and so that's why you see quite a lot of the SaaSification of AI, because actually the big tech companies aren't doing a very good job. And then on the other hand, you've got the big consulting companies, the big service integrators saying it's super hard, sign up with us for a year and we'll try and develop something for you. And so actually on either side of that,
we'll try to develop something for that's the stuff that scares me.
Yeah. So on either side of that, there's a dissatisfied customer in the middle. So we want to try and make it as simple as possible for me, because I'm non-technical. So if I can do it, then that's my kind of benchmark, right? Is then anybody can actually do it.
Absolutely.
So our low-code platform will enable that. So we've got two options. Either you bring your own data science, so you're a larger company, you've got data scientists and you've got developers, but this gap in the middle is causing a lot of pain. So we can solve that problem. Or out of the box, we've got AI, which is just very easy to integrate. Again, so I can literally push a few buttons, drag and drop, and then I can produce something which can go to my developers and they go, oh, this is what I need to be able to integrate this stuff into our software. So just really makes the idea to execution, or at least to testing, then you've still got to make some business decisions about moving it forwards, but at least it goes from idea to testable in a matter of 24 hours, whereas historically it's taken weeks, months, or 80% of the time. So yes, we're trying to get into that point.
You're bridging a chasm that most people don't realize actually exists. That's really good.
Exactly.
Who are the typical clients that would probably make best use of this?
So the hypothesis originally was big enterprises have this pain. They've got a backlog of things they want to get into production. They're investing huge amounts of money into data science, and they're like, when are we going to get the value? And so we built it knowing that was a massive market. But what we found is, despite the fact that those enterprises saying this is urgent, we're getting pressure from the board, their version of urgent to our version of urgent is a world away, right? So the cadence of solving those big problems. It's just too slow for us at this point in our life cycle. So what we've done, actually, we found success in other SaaS companies. So similar size to us and bigger. So looking around in that kind of just before Series A or just after Series A, they're beginning to scale, and they're looking at how do we deliver on the promises that we've made either to our customers or to our investors that we're going to do AI, right? So how do we actually get to recommendation functions? How do we get to predicting things? How do we get to personalization at scale? How do we get to adaptation for user experience? All of those things, we're like, yep, this is, we're going to deliver that. And then we're like, oh, we're not quite sure how we're going to do it. And we don't want to overinvest in something that we don't know. We want to go faster than we think we can do through recruiting and building our own team. We want to have the certainty of our OpEx kind of model. And so that's what we're finding is hitting the sweet spot is companies where the cadence is the same. When they say urgent, they mean urgent. We've got to get this feature out in the next release. We are worried about a competitor coming that's going to eat our lunch. We see a huge opportunity just over here if we can deliver this new feature or function. And so that's the world where we're seeing most success. And that's in fintech, it's in IoT, it's in sport tech, it's in a whole bunch of kind of sectors. But the common threads are doing stuff with unstructured data. So if you've got documents, you've got PDFs, you've got audio files, you've got video, how do you get a lot more value out of that and unlock some value for your customers? Or recommendations is the other big thing, really. So you've got a user, what do you tell your user to do next? How to make their journey better? How do you expand the use of your platform so you make more money? So they're the two kind of major things: is automation of the extraction of information from big data sets that is really hard to wrangle, and then the recommendations for the users. They're the kind of two big areas at the moment.
Sounds like a whole new category of expertise is being brought to the table here at this point. Yeah, because if you think about natural language processing, which is that extracting information from text. So I'll give you a couple of examples. One, we've got the capability for this recording. We can upload the video of this recording. It extracts all of the audio, then it transcribes it all, and then it will output the sentiment on a second-by-second basis, on a sentence-by-sentence basis, and the share of voice. So did you do most of the talking? Did I do most of the talking? What was the sentiment over that time? And then you can do that across all of your podcasts and go, okay, actually, when did I appear to be happier? How much coffee had I had that day? Or what day of the week was it? Or was it a particularly interesting topic? Or was the person... So you can, if you imagine that at an organizational level in the world that we now live in, people are like, wow, we're getting insights that we just had. Unless we have somebody sat in every single meeting, in every single call, we can't get those insights. And so that expertise we have out of the box for people now. So you can put in a video, you can put in a website review, you can put in an email chain, you can put in whatever, and you will get that information out the other end. And that's incredibly powerful, but now is kind of accessible to anybody. That's huge. That's actually really huge. Website is Arcanum.ai. AI. Yeah, okay. So ARCANUM, Arcanum.ai. Yeah. Okay, cool. And then if somebody wants to find you, can they find you? LinkedIn's the place, right? So I was one of the first 15,000 users of LinkedIn. Because again, for me, business development was at the core of what I was doing. I have been doing for my whole life. So for me, when you think about what do you do on your mobile phone every day, it's kind of like, for me, it's email, sport, LinkedIn. They're kind of my three default. If I've got a few minutes in between meetings, that's my kind of process. So I've just always lived in LinkedIn. And so, yeah, people can find me on that. And you will, if you search for my name, you'll see my old LinkedIn profile, which still exists in the pharma world. And then my new one, which is Asa Cox NZ, which is my new persona for Arcanum. And I've actually just last week reconnected the two together to see whether I can get some opportunities in my old network. Yeah. Most people will your new LinkedIn is going to be one of the links that's going to be
Yep.
in the comment section, as well as the website. What would you think is the biggest challenge that you're facing right now, considering that you've already gotten to this point, you've done a lot of, you've obviously had a good level of success. What's your biggest challenge at present?
Now it's in the interesting kind of scale phase, right? So as I kind of said earlier on in the discussion, I like in creating things. And now we're in that phase of we're still the platform will continue to be created, but now we've got to get something where we can turn the handle, where it's repeatable. And I've got to kind of step back from that always wanting to create new things. Actually, we just got to turn the handle and just sell multiple of the same thing, which is, for me, is a little bit of a challenge, actually, mentally. But that's basically what we're doing, right? Is we're trying to get that top of the funnel to come through. So as you kind of alluded to earlier, this is a new capability which people don't know they currently need. So we don't get inbound traffic, right? We do content marketing, but people aren't Googling for solve me the problem between data scientists and devs, right? So that becomes a bit of a challenge in there. And so we're very focused on our channel and our partners who are already having those conversations with customers. But for us, it's really that top of the funnel stuff. We just want to talk to people who want to do some smart stuff in their software. And we want them to know that, literally for a couple of $1,000 and a couple of weeks, you can deliver something, right? And because that's the message which people aren't hearing in the market. Either they're bombarded by big tech who say, come here and do everything in the cloud, or they're McKinsey and Bain or Deloitte or whoever saying, you've got to have a global strategy and go all in on AI, and you've got to commit millions of dollars. So we just want it to be, it is accessible and real, just start today.
That makes it actually accessible for mid-size and even some of the larger small business enterprises.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
So that's one of the good pieces of advice I had from a new investor recently is, how do you turn the constraints of the New Zealand as a country market into a competitive advantage? And so our biggest enterprises in New Zealand are SMEs in the big markets, right? So we've built something which actually is fit for the second tier mid-market in most of the developed countries. So that's where we're targeting. We don't want the massive logos, because we know we're wasting our time in that space, because Silicon Valley already solves those problems. Yeah. But for 95% of the rest of the companies out there, they need something which is easy and actually delivers value very quickly. And so we're going after that kind of tier 2 mid-market.
Makes absolute sense. That's awesome. Well, guys, we've actually kind of overshot our time. We've had an excellent chat again here, Asa. Really, thank you for coming and sharing your story and sharing your business and things of that nature. Guys, you know where to find them. All the links are down in the description below. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit the little bell next to it, so you know when the next podcast or YouTube video comes out. Anchor has started doing video podcasts, so you guys might actually see this podcast as a video as well as an audio. So if you happen to be watching us on Anchor, make sure you subscribe over there and show us a little support. We could use it. If you're listening to us on any of the other platforms, by all means, subscribe, download, leave us a review if you would, and be honest, be brutally honest if you would. Apparently, I got my first hater, which means I've arrived.
Nice, good work.
Yeah, I said I shouldn't have said anything. I offered nothing of value, which was like, wow, okay, cool. I'm still sitting here going, considering who I was talking to, he was probably right, actually. It is what it is. Out of all of these stories, though, there's somebody out there that could probably get at least 1 or 2 golden nuggets out of these interviews. Take this one, send it off to a friend, a colleague, somebody that you think could actually, hey, here's a story, check this out, or here's a company. I mean, Arcanum, if you might know a developer that's having this issue at their SME, send them this interview, let them get in touch with Asa. It's meant for all of you. It doesn't matter whether you're working at a gas station or you're working at a huge Fortune 5 company. All of these stories matter to somebody. So give it a shot, share it out. We really do appreciate the fact that you make the time and take the time to come and watch or listen, and we hope you continue to. So till next time, stay up, stay safe, stay healthy, and live. For myself, Coffee with Mike and Asa Cox. Ciao for now.
For more information on Java Chat, visit www.javachatpodcast.com. You've been listening to Coffee with Mike on Java Chat. Tune in weekly to this podcast for the next episode. You can also download or subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform. A production of Oasis Media Group, LLC. Located in Las Vegas, Nevada. Copyright 2019. All rights reserved.